Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, inshallah today's topic can be on the status of women in Islam in the light of Quran and Sunnah. This question is asked by many people, non-Muslim well as Muslim. So I'm going to try inshallah to briefly tell you about the equality and the status of women in Islam. I begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Whomsoever Allah guide, none can misguide. Whomsoever Allah leave to misguide, none can guide. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah alone, and I also bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his last and final messenger to mankind. So, today we're talking about the status of women. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that He has honored men and women over all creatures, and in the Quran Allah says, and we have certainly honored the children of Adam and carried them on the land and sea and provided for them of good things and preferred them over much of what we have created with definite preference. Surah 17 verse 70. Undoubtedly, this honor includes men and women. A man is honored because he is a human, as a woman is honored because she is a human. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored women and does not deprive them of their rights. He does not burden a woman beyond their abilities because He is the creator and a nourisher and knows best about their rights and responsibilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, does He who created not know while He is a subtle and acquainted? Surah 67 verse 14. The issue of justice toward women should be discussed comprehensively from all sides and not simply from the perspective of women's right. At the same time, women's responsibility should be discussed because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create people to give them rights without imposing duties upon them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, then did you think that we created you uselessly and that to us you would not be returned? Surah 23 verse 115. Moreover, there are truth or fact in the Quran which every Muslim should remember. The Quran says, Allah says in the Quran, and your Lord does injustice to no one. Surah 18 verse 49. And it is also declared that Allah purifies whom He wills and injustice is not done to them. Surah Nisa verse 49. And Allah is not ever unjust to His servant. Surah 22 verse 10. And Allah would not have wronged them, but it was they who were wronged themselves. Surah 29 verse 40. And indeed Allah does not do justice as much as an atom wide. Surah An-Nisa verse 40. Allah also says in the Quran that and will not be wronged even as much as the speck on a date seed. Surah An-Nisa verse 124. And also said in the Quran, it is not Allah who wronged them, but they wronged themselves. Surah 9 verse 70. This and other verses confirms the important truth that every Muslim must believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala justice is absolute. And for everything or everyone, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, male or female, Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala does not measure things according to human scale, but with divine scale. It is with this that he judges the action of the people. First of all, number one, women in textual source of Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah, which mention or emphasize protecting the woman, safeguarding the woman rights, and being kind to them because they are often vulnerable and sensitive. The following examples are from the Quran and the Sunnah, inshallah. Women in the Quran, there are many verses, many verses between women and men. So inshallah, for example, Allah says in the Quran, O mankind, fear Allah, your Lord, who created you from one soul and created from it its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah, through whom you ask one another, and the wombs. That's in Surah Nisa, verse 1. And it is He who produced you from one soul and gave you a place of dwelling and storage. We have detailed the sign for a people who understand. Surah Al-An'am, which is Surah 6, verse 98. And it is He who created you from one soul and created from it its mates that He might dwell in security with her. Surah 7, verse 189. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, He created you from one soul, then He made from it its mate. Surah 39, verse 6. Men and women are equal in their act of worship and in performing the Islamic obligation or duties. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not prefer one sex over other or one race over another. The Quran states, Allah states in the Quran, O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you people and tribes, that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. Surah 49, verse 13. Men and women are, and Muslim and non-Muslim are equal in terms of their servitude to the Creator. Allah says in the Quran, there is no one in the heaven and earth but that he comes to the most merciful as a servant. Surah 19, verse 93. The Quran declares, as Allah says, that men and women are equal in terms of reward and punishment. It is stated that whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, while he is a believer, and those will enter paradise, being given provision therein without account. Surah 40, verse 40. Also Allah says in the Quran that and their Lord responded to them, never will I allow to be lost the work of any workers among you, whether male or female. You are of one another. Surah 3, verse 195. Also Allah says, it declares that whoever does a righteous deed, whether male or female, while being a believer, those will enter paradise and will not be wronged, even as much as the speck on a date seed. Surah Nisa, verse 124. And whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, while he is believing or a believer, we will surely cause him to live a good life, and we will surely give them their reward in the hereafter, according to their best of what they used to do. Surah 16, verse 97. Allah also mentioned in the Quran, and He emphasizes it, that equality between both men and women regarding their rights and duties and due to their wives is similar to what is expected of them, according to what is reasonable. Surah 2, verse 2 to 8. For men is a share of what the parents and the close relative leave, and for women is a share of what the parents and the close relative leave, be it little or much, an obligatory share. Surah Nisa, verse 4. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran pre-Islamic Arabs to do. So think about this. When one of them is informed of the birth of a female, his face becomes dark and he suppresses the grief. He hides himself from the people because of the ill of which he has been informed of. Should he keep it in humiliation or bury it in the ground? Unquestionably, the evil is what they decide. Surah 16, verse 58 to 59. So here, dear brothers and sisters, look at it. Before Islam came to existence, 1400 years ago, the non-believers is to bury their child. If he was a female, knowingly, they bury their child alive if he was a female. When Islam came to existence, that abolished it. This text not only emphasizes equality regarding Islamic duties and the rights and the obligation, but also recommend that the Muslim deal with women in gentle, noble, and kindly manners. Allah says in the Quran, live with them in kindness, for if you dislike them, perhaps you dislike a thing, and Allah makes therein much good. Surah 4, verse 19. Also Allah says in the Quran, give them a gift of compensation, a wealthy according to his capability, the poor according to his capability, the provision according to what is acceptable, a duty upon the doors of door of good. Surah Baqarah 236. So here, brother, can I mention something? Even in the modern days, we have a female child, when they're born, they've been buried alive. Research shows in India and in many other parts of the world. Islam abolished that 1400 years back. What is the reason why we're burying the female? When you hear that, that is wrong. This is not in Islamic way, or even in the non-Islamic way. The Quran says, lodge them in the section of where you dwell, out of your means, and do not harm them in order to oppress them. And if they should be pregnant, then spend on them until they give birth. And if they breastfeed for you, then give them their payment and comfort among yourselves in an acceptable way. Surah 65, verse 16. Also Allah mentioned, provided that you seek them in marriage with gift from your property. Surah 4, verse 22. Also Allah says, give them from the wealth of God which He has given you. Surah 24, verse 33. And it is said, but if they obey you once, seek no means against them. Indeed, God is ever exalted, grand. An-Nisa, Surah 4, verse 32. Also Allah says, O you who have believed in it, it is not lawful for you to inherit women by compulsion, and do not make difficulties for them in order to take back part of what you gave them. Surah Nisa, verse 19. Allah also mentioned, either keep her in an acceptable manner or release her with a good treatment. Surah Baqarah, Surah 2, verse 2 to 9. So, brothers and sisters, if you look at it, Islam gave the right to Muslim women when Islam came to 1400 years back, inheritance of property. in having a job, voting, having properties, voting, to vote for themselves. This all just came to being only like 60, 70 years back by the Western world. It wasn't. Women did not have right to vote. Women did not have right to work. Women is still up to date. Women do not have an equal pay as males. So how could we say that in Islam that women do not have equal rights or equality when Islam has given the females equal right, equal earning, equal share? Only Allah says that a person cannot be equal in their righteousness and piety. For example, I could be less pious than a female who could be more pious in the sight of Allah. Those are the things we need to understand. So this is my brief talk on Islam, status of women in Islam. If I have said anything wrong, may Allah forgive me. And if I've said anything wrong, if brothers and sisters finds, please put a comment or correct me. Subhanallah wa bihamdi wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayhi. May Allah forgive me and may Allah guide me to the straight path and increase me my iman and knowledge. Jazakallahu khairan. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.